Welcome to the True Grime Stories podcast, where in every episode, we'll unravel a new mystery of cleaning business transformation from a grimy mess to a great success. Join me, your host, Jeannie Henderson, as together we dig up cleaning business secrets that you've been dying to know. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to True Grime Stories. Today, I have a special treat for you. We are going to bring back our very first episode where I had the opportunity to interview my hero, the most inspiring cleaning business owner of them all, Debbie Sardone. She's my coach and the founder of Cleaning Business Fundamentals. She's helped thousands of cleaning business owners get unstuck. So if you've ever felt stuck, this is the episode for you to listen to. Debbie's going to share how she knew her business was just 3 feet from gold, but couldn't discover the strategies that she needed to get unstuck. And she's going to share how changing her mindset helped her to overcome obstacles and how building a community can lead to business success. So let's listen now to my interview with Debbie Sardone. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of True Grime Stories. I'm your host, Jeannie Henderson. I'm the CEO of Jeannie Cleaning in Michigan, and I'm a CBF coach. And I'm so excited to get started today to deliver this podcast to help everyone who is looking for help in the cleaning business, specifically the residential cleaning business. You know, if you're already in the cleaning business and you're trying to figure out how to grow it, or if you're thinking about being in the cleaning business, you're in the right spot. And I'm really excited that our very first guest is someone who has really impacted my life and the lives of many other cleaning business owners. And that is Debbie Sardone. And just to tell you a little bit about Debbie before we get started, there's so much to say, but Debbie is the founder and owner of Buckets and Bodes Maid Service in Flower Mound, Texas. And she's the owner of Speed Cleaner, or co-owner of Speed Cleaning, and also the founder of Cleaning Business Fundamentals. And she's the founder of Cleaning for a Reason. So Debbie has had a huge impact in the cleaning industry. She took a small business that she started out of her home, cleaning by herself, like many of us did, into a multi-million-dollar empire of many businesses. And she has helped thousands of cleaning business owners all around the world to grow and be successful in the cleaning industry. So Debbie runs several live events every year. And we always look forward to the times that we get together. It's a great community that Debbie's created in Cleaning Business Fundamentals. We'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from Debbie today as she shares her grime story and how she got started. So welcome, Debbie. Thank you for being on our very first episode.
It is such an honor to be on the first episode, Jeannie. I have been so excited about your launch of True Grime Stories for the industry for a while. So I can't believe this day is finally here. It's so exciting, and I'm honored I get to be your launch guest. So I can't wait till we start digging into all the true grime that's happened in the industry and in my life, as well as the lives of other cleaning professionals. It's just a great topic.
Yeah, I know we're all out there searching for help, so I'm so glad that we get to kind of partner on this and help cleaning business owners all over the world through our podcast. So let's dive in. Pretty excited to talk about your grime story. All of us cleaning business owners at one point hit a point where we're stuck or we're miserable or we can't figure our way out. What was your grime story? What was happening in your business when you knew that it has to be better? There has to be some way to do it better than this.
Yeah, there has to be a better way. Otherwise, I'm out, right? Uh-huh. It's like you kind of have to hit rock bottom and have the ultimate grime scene going on in your business before you do anything. Because if you're not insanely miserable, you can tolerate and wallow in semi-misery for years. But I did hit that brick wall. And I remember the day when I told my husband, I'm just going to go back to cleaning. I can't take it anymore. The stress is too high. People are always quitting. I had already put down the mop. I was trying to build a big cleaning company. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was ready to quit. I was literally ready to walk away. In fact, this was back when my business was all on 3x5 cards. Do you remember the 3x5 card box? Yeah. And inside was a 3x5 card for every client I had. And I don't know how many I had back then, but I actually have that little box of 3x5 cards to this day. Wow. And yeah, I do. And I was going through.
So how many employees, how many clients do you think you had?
I might have had 30 or 40 clients. I remember the card, stack was about that deep. Mm-hmm. And so I probably had 4 employees coming and going. So one day I'd have 3. The next day I'd have 4. And the next day I'd have 2. It was a feast or famine. And that was my brick wall. Speaking of brick walls behind me, that was my brick wall where the true grime got too intense and I wanted to quit. So I pulled out my 3x5 card box and I was pulling out my favorite clients that paid the best, right? Like these were the ones that averaged $6 an hour. But I pulled out the clients I liked the best. And I was setting those aside because I was going to go back to cleaning. I was going to fire everybody and give away my clients to the people that worked for me. And my husband just sat down with me and he said, well, do you really have to just quit everything? What if you just cut back, right? And instead of doing estimates all day Saturday, half a day on Sunday, Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, what if you just did one estimate a week and one estimate on Saturday mornings and forget the rest, And so that was kind of my first turning point where I realized, I don't have to give up. I could control it. But then my second grime scene where it was like, Jeannie, I was 3 feet from gold. I was sitting on the edge of $1 million. And this was back in the late 90s. So $1 million in the late 90s when we were all charging 20 and 25 an hour was like $2 million plus. But I was on the edge.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that today. And so I was sitting on the edge of reaching that $1 million mark that I had been trying so desperately to hit. But I couldn't figure it out because at this point, the business was bigger. I had overhead. I'd already bought a bigger house, bought nicer cars. I had an office and an office staff. And my business was bleeding money so badly. There were times I couldn't take a paycheck. And I'd have to call my husband and say, hold the check, don't cash it today. Right? It's like, Deborah, we got this house now. We have this car payment. And my business was in so much trouble, even though it looked healthy on the outside. Right. I think I had about a team of 10 at that point. And I was ready to quit again. I was like, this isn't working and it's costing me a fortune and I'm going to go out of business. And I found a consulting firm. And even though I didn't have the money, I hired them. And 9 months later, I actually had a system to follow. I broke through the $1 million mark and we've made tens of millions of dollars since. But that was my second grime scene where I almost quit. I almost got through into the quitter's prison, right? And I would have stayed there. And I'm so glad I didn't. I needed to hit the lowest point. And I thought I'd already hit the lowest point, but I needed to hit the lowest point for me to finally do something about it. And I did. And I have no regrets.
Well, I'm so glad you did, because when you made that choice, not only did it impact your business and the lives of the people in your business, but it went on to impact a lot of other people's lives, which we'll talk about later. But so I love that you mentioned 2 different grime scenes because, there are cleaning business owners at every level looking for help, trying to figure it out. And that first grime scene is one that many people run into.
Yep.
That when you're under 4 cleaning technicians and when one calls out, it just throws off everything to such a degree that you really can't go on.
When you have 4 employees and one person just quits without notice, which was very common and still is, you just lost 25% of your employee base. And that means you can't service 25% of your customers, but your overhead, your office rent, your expenses don't go down by 25%. And so that first grime scene was the first time I had ever experienced business crises. Now I solved it through sheer grit, cutting back, and settling for slower growth. That's how I solved it. I didn't solve it with systems. I didn't solve it with processes. So then when I got antsy again and I felt like I want to grow this thing, I want to get $1 million. I want to reach that $1 million mark. I want to double my team. I only knew how to do it through sheer grit and struggle and working longer hours and going back. I mean, Jeannie, I remember going home at 2:00 in the morning because I had to stay up almost all night to do payroll because I had spent the day juggling a schedule of somebody who quit. And I remember one time having to call the police department and saying, would you mind parking out front while I walk from my office to my car? Because it's 2:00 in the morning.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, that's how I grew back in those days until I found a company that would show me systems so that I could get to $1 million without working longer hours. I could get to 2 million without working 120 hours a week. And I didn't have that before I got help, and it turned everything around.
Well, and I'm sure I've talked to many cleaning business owners who get to that point and they're like, I don't want to grow. Because if growth means that I have no life, I don't want to go there. And people really have a hard time finding that solution by themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way is I'm just going to have to not have a life and my business is going to run my life instead of me running my business. And I was there. I burnt the midnight oil many times, working 7 days a week, and before I met you, and you know, it's miserable. You know, we call
most
that,
people settle.
Yeah,
right. We call that the valley of despair. I know you're about to say that. It's like, here's why it's the valley of despair, and that's why I was in the valley of despair when I thought I'm just going to go bankrupt. This isn't going to work. It is because you've gotten big enough to where it kind of doesn't make sense to close your doors. Back when I was all 3x5 cards, I could kind of do it, go back to cleaning, and I'd make just about as much money I was making back then with my 3 and 4 helpers. But then when you reach a certain size and you hit the valley of despair, you're 350,000, 450,000, just under 500,000, maybe a tiny above, right? It's like, it's too big to close, but it's too small to stay where you're at. But to double without systems means you don't have a life. And maybe you give up a paycheck that you can't afford to give up if you don't double with systems or triple with systems. And that's why people quit in the valley of despair, or they end up just staying there for a decade.
Yeah, I've talked to many people who are stuck at 500,000 or 600,000 for years, and they feel they're proud of their business because they've built a significant business, but they're a slave to the business.
Yes.
You know, they can't take vacations, you know, they can't figure out their way around it. And they look around them and they're like, well, I'm doing the same thing that all the other big guys are doing. So why isn't it working for me? But that's because that's not the solution, right? That's not the solution. So what, you know, when you hit that wall, when you hit your brick wall and you just, you know, you weren't making money, but you had an almost $1 million business. So,
you know, I'll tell you, Jeannie, here's what was going on inside. Humiliation. I looked successful on the outside, but I knew I was failing on the inside. And so it's humiliating to have to raise your hand and say, I know it looks like we're succeeding, but we're not. That was humiliating. And then your confidence drops like a rock because you know you're 3 feet from gold. You know you should be able to get to the next level. Why can't I? And you really have no one to talk to. So back then, Jeannie, there were no trade associations back then. They hadn't emerged yet, at least not for the residential cleaning. ARCSI became the first one. Now it's ISSA Residential. And I got to serve on that board, their founding board. And I was so grateful when I found it because I had been so alone. But when you're in business all alone and you don't have a community, you have no one to talk to but your family. And they kind of get sick and tired of hearing about how horrible things are, right?
Everybody thinks you're crazy for what you're doing. But doesn't
like, why don't you just fire them? It's like, because I'll have to go clean if I do. You know? So you feel humiliated. You also feel like your hands are tied. Like you end up having to work with people you don't really want to work with. You know, you've built this incredible program called Culture Magic. Well, I didn't have magical culture back in those days. I had a terrible culture because I had no choice but to keep my C players, people who didn't care about me or my business or my customers. And I had to keep them on staff longer than I wanted to. So that deep down inside really wrecks your confidence in your own ability to be a good leader. And so there's so many emotions that go on when you're going through this really grimy phase of your business. And you really do need to, move forward and make the changes, or go backwards and go back to an easier life, because that stuff in the middle, that valley of despair, is the hardest place to stay in.
Right. And you want to just end the pain. Mm-hmm. So there's only two ways, it's either forward or backward.
Right.
Get out of that painful spot. But I do love that you talked about being 3 feet from gold. And I know a lot of people feel that way. Like, you can feel there's an opportunity. Yeah. There is so much more you could do. Your phone's ringing off the hook, but you can't hold on to employees. Or you have employees, but you can't figure out how to close the sale. And you're just like, there's all these issues going on. So you're at this point and you found your consultant, which, I don't know why it is. We don't go looking for consultants before we start a business. We wait until we
hit a brick wall.
Yeah. A brick wall. And then we're like, help. And the white flag goes up. I was the same way. Yep. And so you found your consultant. What was the big eye-opening thing when they started talking to you? Because I remember when I first started learning from you, there were just a couple of things that I'm like, why didn't I ever think of that?
Yes.
So what were some of the things that they saw right away in your business that you needed to change that would make a big difference?
I'll tell you one thing that changed everything for me was when I had the conversation with the consultants, much like we do today, like the conversation I had with you when you were joining my program, which really was modeled after so many things I learned from them. And, I've outlasted their business. They're out of business. I don't know how long they've been out of business, but they didn't last as long as me. I've always wanted to go back and thank them. But I will tell you, in my first conversation with them, when they were considering taking me on as a client, and it wasn't a given that if I had the money, they would take me, because number one, I didn't have the money. I had to scrape it together. But it was that first conversation, Jeannie, where I said, do you think you can help me? And I told them what my goal was. I'm just trying to get to $1 million. I want my paychecks to be steady. And I want a team full of happy people who love working for me instead of miserable people who can't wait to quit without notice. And I remember the consultant on the phone with me said, if we take you on, I know we can help you 100%. I was expecting him to say, 75% of the people that work with us succeed. I was expecting something like that. Or 50% of the people that work with us succeed, which would have been good enough for me. I would have been like, okay, I'm all in. Let's give it a try. But he said, no, I know 100% we can help you. And that changed everything for me, because up until that point in time, I thought maybe it's just not possible, right? There's too many people who don't want to work. There's too much cheap competition out there. Therefore, I can never charge what I need to charge and still make a profit. And it's just not possible to grow a thriving business where you make a lot of money and you don't work all the time. And so I thought, well, maybe it isn't possible. Maybe what I want can't be done. And when they gave me their confidence, because I didn't have any, I borrowed their confidence, which was the only way I could write a check for $40,000, which is what they charged me, is I had to feel 100% certain, not 50% certain, not 80 or 75% certain. I needed to feel 100% certain that working with them would change my life. And once I had that confidence, and I had the confidence because they had the confidence, they're like, oh yeah, if we choose to work with you, I guarantee you your business will be better. I guarantee you we can help you. Because I kept thinking, well, my business is different. Things are different in Texas. Right. Or get this one. This is what I truly believe, because I throughout all the things that people say to me now, I said, well, I do have to warn you that maid service is different, right? Maid service is different.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's all these people that can find it cheaper, and there's all these workers that can go steal your clients and become your competitor after you poured all the training into them. And, I just shared all the unique challenges of the maid service industry. And he said, if we take you on as a client, I'm 100% certain we can help you. That was all I needed, Jeannie. I needed somebody else to tell me 100% it is possible. And
Right.
I was all in.
That belief piece,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like believing that you can build a better business.
Yeah.
And we do, as entrepreneurs, when we get into that situation, I don't know if we're making excuses, but we tend to say, well, it's different in my area, or the maid service can't really grow past 1 million. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. Or, we start to, it's like how we self-comfort. We, it must be right here.
You can't create something that you can't visualize, right? I couldn't visualize a business with an amazing team culture. I can now. I couldn't visualize a company filled with people who clean houses for a living that were happy to be there. I couldn't visualize it. So how could I create it? And once they said, oh yeah, we've seen it, we've done it, I was like, show me, I will pay you. Now, I didn't know how I was going to scrape together the money. Once they said, yes, we'll take you. And I'll tell you, Jeannie, back then, the reason why I wasn't sure they would take me on as a client is the person who sold me the package, who sold me into the concept of you need to hire the George S. May consultancy firm. They said, but I don't know if they'll take you because they only work with businesses with 10 or more employees, W-2. Well, back then I was like, yeah, they're all independent contractors. And he said, I don't know if they'll work with you. But when I told them that, they said, yeah, they're really 1099 employees. And they helped me get that right. Within 6 months, I was even able to become legitimately W-2. And so they saw me as a legitimate business with a lot of opportunity, because that particular program, you had to have at least 10. And I didn't have the money, but I found a way. And it was the most expensive thing besides my own home that I've ever invested in. I even buy used cars and usually spend less than that, at least for that day's market value. Right. It was the most expensive thing I ever invested in. And it took me years to pay it off. But I'm telling you, it took me from, a quitter's prison, literally, to the freedom and the financial freedom and the people freedom and the purpose freedom I always hoped that I could have, just didn't know it was possible inside this industry.
Well, Debbie, I have been with you for 7 years now, and I have not heard that version of the story yet. Like, I haven't heard that part about how the, George S. May Company shared with you their confidence.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things that's so important about reaching out for help, which is what entrepreneurs often don't do out of either pride or fear. We don't ask for help. We're like, I got to figure this out all by myself. And the truth is, you don't.
We assume nobody can help us.
Mm-hmm.
We assume nobody really understands our unique challenges. And we're incorrect. We are incorrect, thankfully.
Yeah. There's so many ways that you can find help, and you should.
Yeah.
I believe that everyone should be part of an association and, part of a community where there are other people doing the same thing that they're doing, because we just learn from each other. But to have these great coaches come into your life, I love the story about how it impacted you and your business, but also how it then took you into a whole other adventure. So let's break here. Let's take a little pause. I love hearing about this grime story, and we'll come back and investigate it more. But first, let's hear from Cleaning Business Fundamentals, the program that Debbie developed, and our sponsor. So let's hear a message from CBF.
Is your cleaning business a grime story? There's no need to stay stuck in the muck, because you're not alone. With over 500 active members and more than 500 graduates of our Cleaning Business Fundamentals program, CBF is the #1 cleaning business academy in the world and has created more mop-free millionaires than any program in the industry. Learn more and let CBF take your residential cleaning business from a grime story to a gleaming success.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We're here with Debbie Sardone, the founder of Buckets and Bows Maid Service and Cleaning Business Fundamentals. And Debbie was sharing before our break all about her grime story and how she started to search for help and found some help in a consultant firm. So, Debbie, what were the things that your consultant led you to do that took you from where you were stuck in the muck to getting unstuck?
I probably couldn't have articulated it back then the way I'm able to break it down into the framework that I have today. But I realized, and now as part of Cleaning Business Fundamentals, it was the framework of success that they gave me is really how we help, and you're one of the master coaches in our program, how we help other people achieve the same level of success. And so one of the first things we worked on, so when they came out, you got to remember, Jeannie, this is back in the 90s. None of us were using the internet. I'm not going to say it wasn't invented yet. We just weren't using it. None of us, like QuickBooks didn't even exist back then,
It
right?
was
You did.
slow, and there was that little modem sound when you tried to.
Yeah. Oh, AOL. Yes. A little squawking sound,
Those
right?
of you who aren't old enough to know, but the internet didn't work back then.
It didn't work. In fact, my first pen pal on AOL was Sharon Cowan. She's the one that
Oh, yes,
introduced
Sharon.
me to using the internet for, like emailing people and having pen pals. That's what we called it back then.
Mhm.
And so one of the first things that they worked on when they flew out to my business, and we're talking a team, I can't remember exactly how many, but there were at least 3 or 4. And you got to remember,
That
this is
explains the cost. They had to fly to you. They had to stay there with you for a period of time.
hotel, airfare, all their meals they had to pay for, and their consultant day rate. And there were 3 or 4 that started the project. They called them projects. And I had to keep running to the bank every few days to borrow another 10,000 and another 10,000 and another 10,000. And about 2 weeks in, I ran out of money. The bank said, "We're done." I kept increasing the line of credit and maxed out my credit cards. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I said, "I'm out of money. The bank won't give me any more." And they said, "Okay, we're packing up and going home."
Wow.
And they did. And I never saw them again because there was no ongoing coaching like we've built into our program today. It didn't exist. So they did the, let me show you how and what to do. That's what they did. So the what to do and the how to do, they gave it to me, and it was life changing, but there was no do it with you. And that means when I hit the other grime scene, like at 9/11, and then years later, pandemic, all the different grime scenes that we come up on when you are a business owner, no matter what industry you're in, I never saw them again. But they left me with a framework that we follow to this very day, Jeannie. It's the same framework I gave to you and I've given to hundreds and hundreds of other cleaning business owners. But the first framework was the owner's role. And they dug deep into what I do. And how many days a week do you have to leave the office and go clean because somebody called in sick or somebody quit or your trainer wasn't available and you had to train? How many days a week were you out in the field? So the first thing we worked on was the owner's role. And they showed me the difference between me doing, which back then we would call $10 an hour work. There's no such thing now. Most people would call it $20 an hour work. But they showed me the difference between me doing $10 an hour work and me doing $100 an hour work. Or you and I now, we talk about it today, doing $20 an hour work or $1,000 an hour work. And at that point, I put down the mop and I never picked it up again, which is really what now we call a program inside of CBF called 90 Days Mop Free. Because I put down that mop and 90 days went by and I hadn't picked it up. And then I realized, well, that means 4 months could go by, and so could 6, and so could 9 months, so could 12 months, and now 30 years mop free.
Yeah. And that was, I know for me, that was a very eye-opening experience as well, to even think that I might not ever clean again.
Never. And when I found out, here you had been a former highly successful franchise owner, business owner, owner of multiple restaurants, training new restaurant startups, which is why you became really known in our industry as our startup coach, right? You're the best one to work with if you're starting a cleaning business. And it's like, you've done all that training and you actually have to go out and clean some days. It's like, yeah, I don't want to, I don't choose to. And so that was part of my program is 90 days mop free. We need the owner to only do CEO work. And they help me understand the difference that all work isn't equal. 8 hours is not equal. A CEO's 8 hours could be worth $8,000 or $25,000 versus one of my employees' 8 hours could be worth $800, right? Or $600 that they can generate from my business. And so the owner's role was the first thing they helped me with. Here's the second thing, Jeannie. I don't know if I've shared this with you before or not, but they gave me something that was so brilliant that I've still used it today. And I teach it all over the country today. I'm going to be talking about this in my book that's hopefully going to be coming out at the end of this year. And it's called
We'll have
Mop
to
Free
launch it
Millionaires.
here on the podcast. We'll have
We
to
will.
talk
That'll
about
be,
it. Yeah.
oh, I've been working on it forever. Mop Free Millionaires. But I've had to give it different names over the years, but now it's trademark. It's called Empowered Pay. But
Oh, yes.
they gave that to me. It was the most brilliant thing. And it was the key to attracting and keeping the best staff. And after I implemented this very unique approach, which we now call Empowered Pay, based on what they taught me, which was so unique and so different, and I got it the minute they shared it with me, and you got it the minute I shared with you, it completely transformed my employee attraction and my employee retention, which is the other piece of the puzzle. I don't care how good you are at managing your time as a CEO. If you can't find and keep a good worker, good luck, right? I don't care how good you are at branding and marketing or how great you are at sales. If you can't find and keep happy long-term employees, good luck.
But I love that because one without the other doesn't work.
Yeah, they
You
showed
have to
me.
have both of those pieces, what the owner's role is, what they're doing effectively to grow their business and design and work on their business, and building that team, that strong team with that great culture. And that was the biggest change I think that I made in my business too, right away. Those two things, you really
Because
boiled it down.
you were already good at sales and marketing, right? You could turn a prospect into a client without a problem. So it wasn't your biggest challenge, although for some it is. You had to fix all 5 pieces in your business. You couldn't just fix one, like the owner never cleans. That wasn't going to be good enough. I had to fix the problem of, I kept seeing it as external back then, Jeannie. I kept telling them, but nobody wants to work. Now, since then, I've
hear that
evolved.
all the time. I mean, people are still saying that today. Now it's like, oh, those millennials,
they don't want to work.
They don't want to work,
Right.
but we know that's not true.
It isn't true. I have plenty of wonderful, happy, long-term millennials that work for me and Gen Xers and even still some baby boomers. I have a couple of baby boomers that have cleaned for us for 25, 26, 27 years. And they're happy as clams.
So much about the company that you've built and the culture that you've built.
And the system that we follow. And every time that begins to break a little bit, we look at that piece of our system, the employee attraction and retention piece. It must be broken if all of a sudden we have a spike in employee loss or a spike in people who don't want to work.
What are some of the clues that you start to see when you know that we're maybe getting off track, that
here's a clue.
Not following the fundamentals?
All of a sudden you're scratching your head going, my really best cleaners are quitting. My best ones are quitting all of a sudden. And you were kind of hanging on to them for a while. It's like, well, if the best people who work for you also are saying this job isn't worth it, despite the reason they gave you, because they love you, they like you, they don't want to burn a bridge, but they're really raising their hand saying, it's no longer worth it. I'm going to go over here and do this thing. And if it doesn't work out, I'll be back. Right? That's the first clue, is when you start losing your seasoned people, it's possible that something has gone off the rails with your system around attracting and retaining. And then the second clue is, all of a sudden, the last few months, we can't get people to show up for the job interview. We can't get people to show up. We can't get people to show up. Okay, well, there's another clue. Your offer stinks. It might have worked 6 months ago and it might have worked a year ago, but your offer is outdated. And so your attraction or retention must always follow a formula, and that formula never changes. And when I see that in my own company, I'm like, let's go back to the formula, right? What percentage are we spending now on labor now that we've raised prices? Oh, we're saving money now that we've raised prices. That's where it's broken. You didn't keep up with pay.
Right. Yeah. If revenue goes up, pay should go up as well, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And too many times people have such a broken business that they finally get up the courage to raise prices. And what do? The owner finally can pay themselves a little bit more. So like they're so hungry for a little tiny raise, they give themselves the raise. Instead, their business is still broken. Their business still can't afford to pay you and them really, really well. Everybody needs to benefit, not just you, the owner, not just the customer. All three of us in this business have to benefit. The VIPs, our employees, our customers, and the owner. If any of those people are shortchanged, the business doesn't work. So the owner's role and the staffing and retention system. The third piece they gave me, Jeannie. So many things I've forgotten. I got entirely from them. And Jeannie, I haven't changed anything. Like nothing since they gave it to me, because it worked. When a system works, the system doesn't change. Right. Tactics change, the times change, the economy changes. Your tactics, will change, but your system, your strategies don't. So they gave me the profit model. It's the same one I follow today. It's the same one I taught you. It's the same one that when our profit model gets out of whack, I can say that's why we're losing staff. Right. That's why we're losing customers. And they gave me a profit model to follow. Every time I talk to a business owner that's struggling, one of the first things I'll ask them is, so tell me, what is your profit model? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, exactly. You don't have one. You don't have a profit model to follow. Well, they gave me one, and I have followed it ever since. And whenever I run into trouble, I look at one of those three buckets and I realize, here's the problem.
Well, and the thing about that, Debbie, I mean, I remember when you first gave me that profit model, and I went, this is where I'm supposed to be, and it acts as a guide for your business all the time. And to be 100%, honest, we started to stray in our business, or we started to see some shifts in where costs were, and our cost of goods sold or our employee labor was too low. Yeah. And we were having hiring issues. I said, we've got a problem here, and we fixed it. We're back on track. But it's a reason guide that you can always use. You can go back to it when you start to see those problems and say, oh, this is it right here, because the numbers never lie, right?
The numbers never lie. And the reason you were able to identify the root of the problem versus the emotion around the problem, right? There's the real reason you have the problem, and there's the emotional reason, right? The emotional reason is those Gen Zs, or it's the pandemic, or it's the labor shortage, or it's the election, right? Those are the emotional reasons. But you were able to go, wait a minute, let's look at the profit model. Oh, look, we're off, right? We're off. So the model, the system becomes your boss. That's why whenever a CBF member kind of slips backwards, all of a sudden they stop growing, or their business is in decline again. And I've been there, right? It's like, wait a minute. Let's go see what we changed in the system, the strategy. And the profit model is one of the first places to look. Now, it is different for different businesses, but most people don't even have one they're following.
Right. Yeah. And, often we talk to people who aren't, don't have a handle on what their numbers are.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things that we learn in CBF. So you've shared some amazing strategies with, our listeners and our audience today. Number one, what's your role as the owner? That's such an important part. And we often don't think about it. We're just blowing with the wind of our business. Whatever the business tells us to do, that's what we're doing. But we really need to be more in control of that. But then also, how are we taking care of our team? How are we inspiring them and motivating them to want to help us grow our business? So tell us about the results. You said you did get over the $1 million mark. What's happened since then, Debbie?
So here's what's so funny, Jeannie, because I've had lots of true grime stories going on in my business, right? Because if you're in business, if you're an entrepreneur, crises will never end.
Mm-hmm.
And so you better have a strategy to overcome every crisis that hits you, right? The hurricanes are never going to end, which so much of our country is going through right now.
Yeah.
So if you're waiting for the next crisis to blow over, you're not tackling it the right way. And so I remember that I got to the $1 million mark. I felt such a sense of relief. I was finally profitable again. I finally had a happy team. And not too long after that, 9/11 hit. And our economy in the Dallas market, along at the same time, the dot-com bust and the housing market crash, all this kind of happened very close in time. And my business went into a tailspin and it started going down. And I almost lost it. And it was time to pivot. And here's what I kind of figured out years later. When you're alone in business, you don't have anyone to help you pivot. And you do need a community. You need people that are way further ahead of you that you can look to and go, well, how did you get through that last crisis? How did you get through that economic recession or that dot-com bust back in the Dallas area and throughout the country? And if you have people who are ahead of you that can say, oh yeah, don't worry, I'm 100% confident you too can grow through this. You won't lose your business. They can show you the way. And I realized how important community was. And it took me a while, Jeannie. I'm not sure we really had community so much when you first joined 7 years ago. I added it. Because I discovered that you can be stuck at the new level you finally get to, and you could stay there for years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened to me when they flew home and they went back to Chicago and I never saw them again. I was alone. We did have my trade association that eventually became a thing and that we could meet each other once a year, but that wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stayed stuck, Jeannie, at $1 million for almost 20 years. And what I didn't know then, but I do understand now when it comes to economics, if you've been stuck for more than 6 months, it's because something's wrong. It isn't because you choose to be stuck. Nobody chooses to be stuck. Something is wrong. Well, I was stuck for 20 years, which in my mind, well, I'm content. I'm coasting. I have all this freedom. I've got time to start my nonprofit. I don't want to have to step into the business, roll up my sleeves, work my head off again to get it to 2 million. But I was telling myself a lie, because if I'm stuck at $1 million for 20 years, I'm actually in decline because the dollar is worth less every year due to inflation. And due to the longevity of your office staff, they all make more than they did 20 years earlier. Many of them are still with me. Right. And they all earn more benefits and they all earn more vacation that I have to pay for. And it's like, I didn't know it, but my business was in decline because it wasn't growing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another, fortunately, I had my CBF community around me that helped me realize, well, I don't have to be stuck anymore. And
right. I mean, I remember just when we were starting to, grow this community, how much I loved it, because I had come out of the franchise world and had been in restaurant franchises for many years before owning our cleaning business. And I missed that community of other business owners doing just exactly what I'm doing. I can pick up the phone and call them anytime and say, hey, I know you had this problem before. How did you fix it? And I don't have to come up with the solutions all by myself. Plus,
you could call them up. You could call them up and say, so what brand of mozzarella are you using? Right?
We did. Yes.
That wouldn't work anywhere else, but it worked inside your industry.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, this is the brand we're using and our customers love it. And you can save money here. And that's what we do.
Right. And we do it all the time. And I hear stories all the time inside of the Cleaning Business Fundamentals community. And you had mentioned the other grime stories, there's themes that kind of come into your life unexpectedly that you don't have any control over. And the pandemic was a big one that we weathered together, and that you led the charge through that pandemic. And we were at CBF Live when the whole world started shutting down in March of 2020. And you realized, you'd been through a couple of these huge crises before. You knew what to do. And the amazing thing about being part of this community is we had a guide to like hold the lantern ahead of us and walk us through that. And I was watching people all over the industry losing their businesses. And in the restaurant industry in particular, but in the cleaning industry, people were giving up.
Yeah.
They thought, we can't go into people's homes. It's too scary. It's not safe. And they were giving up. And you said, no, don't give up. This is an opportunity. And I watched not only my business, but businesses all over the United States actually grow during this period because we had you and we had our Cleaning Business Fundamentals community to kind of support us and carry us through.
You know what happened, Jeannie? I realized in that moment that if I had confidence that we were going to be 100% okay, then I could give that confidence to business owners who would be 100% okay. Versus if I didn't have that confidence and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be really bad. Just let your customers know that you understand if they want to cancel service because times are so uncertain, and you know, just let them know that you understand, right? And it's like, no, we're not going to take a posture of defeat. We're going to lead our industry in being a part of the solution, not being terrified of the problem. And I remember I got angry at one person who went live, who was really not really a coach, but was kind of like trying to coach people. And I remember the fear in her voice. And she went live and she talked about how terrible this is. And, you know, that your employees aren't going to want to come to work for you and you need to give grace, which I agree with, right? You need to, you know, just let them go and probably even need to close your doors and tell your customers that, you know, they should lock themselves in behind their doors. And I remember thinking, no, the opposite is true. And you don't understand this at all. And I stayed up all night long, almost all night long, the night before our conference ended, because literally the world shut down the day before we were going to close our conference on a Saturday. We close our conference on Saturdays at 5:30 p.m. And they were announcing that by Monday, everything would be shut down.
Right.
And I stayed up all night and I changed my talk for Saturday. And I got on that stage and I said, you know, you're now more than ever, you need to send the message to your clients and your employees that they need you now more than ever, that you are here to serve them, that cleaning and disinfecting is a part of the solution. Now you got to remember, back then, none of us really understood anything about this whole epidemic. We didn't understand it. They were still telling us, do not wear masks, right? They literally were.
Right. That's exactly how it started.
It is.
And then everything changed, you know, and they kept
so we were
shutting us down farther and farther.
Exactly. And so I just stood on that stage and I said, you can send a message that says, it's okay if you want to drop and it's okay if you don't, you know, have a job anymore. Or you can send a message that says, I know my employees need their job now more than ever. Some of their husbands work at restaurants, they're closing. Some of their husbands or boyfriends or parents who they live with aren't going to be working. And we're a part of the solution. And this is your chance to be the hero in your community. And we made shirts that said, yep, I'm essential. And our employees wore them with pride. And of course, the CBF model is so unique. It already was perfect for, you know, a pandemic because everybody works solo in this model. And we created guidelines for them to share with their clients. People made up guideline cards to make sure the customers complied with, go to a different room while we clean and disinfect. Here are the extra disinfecting products that we've added to the bucket. And we just approached it with confidence instead of with fear. And I'm telling you, customers thanked us. Now, obviously, we had plenty of customers that had to drop, you know, elderly or health compromised, and they had to drop. But most of them were so grateful. They were like, thank you so much for coming today. It's like, no problem. Go to another room.
Well, and this is a real example of the leadership that we have inside of Cleaning Business Fundamentals, is that whether it's an industry-wide crisis like that, or it's a unique crisis that you're experiencing in your community, we come together and we support each other. And there's always someone who's been through something similar who can help you through it when you're part of a community. And as entrepreneurs, you don't have to be, you know, a lone wolf and figure it all out by yourself. And actually, you probably shouldn't, because there's always someone who has been there before, has figured out a stronger, faster way, and you can shortcut your growth. Like
You can
that
collapse time.
yeah, right. You collapse time when you invest in your education. And I'm so glad that I found you.
And I'm so glad you found us, because you've taught me so much about culture and how to enrich the culture of my own team. And then, of course, the experiences you bring to the whole CBF community because of your background in training, your background in, restaurant development. It's like you bring all these great minds together, but we're all doing the same thing. We learn from each other.
Yeah. No, there's definitely power in all these different experiences coming together. I love watching how our community shares so openly when people have a new idea. It lifts us all. That phrase that you often say, lift as you climb, and our community, everyone embraces it. So cleaning business fundamentals started, what was that, 2000, about 10 years ago? No.
Well, I've been doing iterations of it for almost 20 years, oddly
Okay.
enough, really literally teaching the same formula, but this is version 3, and I really launched version 3 about 10 years ago.
Okay, right. Yeah, the one that I'm a part of. But then prior to that, it was Never Clean Again.
Never Clean Again University.
Yeah.
And before that, it was one-on-one coaching following my 5-step formula.
Well, it's changed so many lives, Debbie, and I can't thank you enough. And I can only imagine the people who are listening and watching this podcast are just, grabbing onto every single word, because and I have been with you for a long time, but just hearing these things again, I get so excited and so inspired. And thank you for infusing our community with your confidence in every single one of us, that if you can do it, we can do it. So I want to speak to everyone who is listening and watching us today, because if you're in the cleaning business or you're thinking about being in the cleaning business, I want to encourage you to talk with us about cleaning business fundamentals, to learn more about the opportunities that are out there, to not go it alone, and to find a path to success that's proven. And hundreds of cleaning business owners, me included, have benefited from this program. And I know for sure that I probably would have given up if I hadn't found cleaning business fundamentals. I was looking for another job. I felt like I was failing. I shared all those same emotions that you did, and I was about ready to give up. So I'm so grateful that
I'm glad you didn't give up either, because I watched your face the other day when we were, we have different levels of this program now, right? Because we keep seeing business owners create way bigger businesses than we thought they would. So we kept creating different tiers in our program. And of course, you're in the highest tier, as well as being a certified master coach to teach our program. And I saw your eyes, Jeannie, when we welcomed some of the business owners that you had mentored in your coaching groups that are now in our elite level program, which is just unheard of in our industry. 1.5 million on up, 2 million, 3 million, $4 million businesses. There's just no community for the residential cleaning space where you can get that many people at that advanced level that have enough freedom to even be a part of the program. And I saw how proud you were. And it's like, yep, I mentored that person, right? And it feels so good to change lives. It is literally the funnest thing we do.
It is. And each and every one of us have the opportunity to do that in our business. I love doing that with my team in my business, Jeannie Cleaning. I've watched so many of those people grow and blossom because I've become better at what I do. I've invested in myself as a leader, and I've been able to then grow leaders in my business. So it is so rewarding, Debbie. And thank you so much. And I'm just so glad that you were here for our very first episode of True Grime Stories. This is just the beginning. So I want to encourage everyone to follow us, to be sure and download and subscribe to True Grime Stories. Don't miss an episode, because every single one will have a strategy to get out of possibly the grime story that you're living in right now. So please join us again in our next episode. And thank you to the amazing Debbie Sardone for being here for our first episode. Thank you, Debbie.
Well, thank you for the honor. I'm really proud to be a part of it, and I can't wait to see how many people we help with this podcast. So thank you for doing it.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
That's a wrap on today's True Grime Stories. Thanks for joining us in uncovering the secrets of cleaning business success. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and download, and check out our show notes for links and info from today's episode, and to learn more about our sponsor, Cleaning Business Fundamentals. Join us next time as we solve another True Grime story.